a 1917 National Geographic article, Alexander Graham Bell once remarked, "Alcohol can be manufactured from corn stalks, and in fact from almost any vegetable matter capable of fermentation." Today's transportation fuel is much more than petroleum products made from foreign and domestic oils. A new generation of transportation fuel comes in the form of renewable fuels made from corn and cellulosic biomass. Ethanol, also known as ethyl alcohol, represents a small percentage of American transportation fuels. The USDA report on its website titled Bioenergy Background stated that biofuels reached 8% in the U.S. in 2009. Most people don't realize that all cars run on ethanol. Much of the flex fuel craze tied renewable fuels like ethanol to only certain manufactured vehicles. This left people with the assumption that only certain cars and trucks can run on ethanol. In fact, if you look in your gas tank today, there is a greater possibility that your car is running on renewable ethanol than your right rear tire is running low on air. For 5 years, I have worked in the ethanol industry in over 7 ethanol plants across the country. I currently help manage ethanol production for POA Biorefining, the world's largest ethanol producer. Many of these plants are close to your home, but most people don't understand what ethanol is and how it's made. In the next few minutes, I would like to inform you of how ethanol is made, where it is used, and what some of the benefits are to our economy. Most ethanol in the U.S. is made from non-edible number 2 yellow corn. That's right, non-edible corn. Humans don't consume number 2 yellow corn. This is good because ethanol does not take away from food production. Joe Kelsey, director of the Indiana Department of Agriculture, says in an Indianapolis Star News article published on May 12, 2011, "It is the number 2 yellow corn intended for feed or ethanol, not the niblets at the grocery store." The World Agricultural Outlook Board, in its June 9, 2011 World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates, suggest that the biggest consumer of corn in the United States is intended for livestock. The corn ethanol industry consumes 104 metric tons of corn in the U.S. Much of the U.S. corn is still exported out of the country. This suggests that there is plenty of corn to supply renewable fuels and food production. The first step in the ethanol production process is taking in the corn. The typical ethanol plant will take in 3 million bushels of corn per year. This equates to 600,000 bushels per week, or 100,000 bushels per day. To put this into perspective, a typical plant will consume 20,000 acres of corn per year. This is equal to the size of a typical county, but typically most plants pull from numerous counties throughout the state. Once the corn is offloaded, it is stored in grain bins and silos. A typical plant will store 10 to 20 days worth of corn on site. Corn is moved through augers and conveyors to a milling facility where the corn is ground into fine flour. This grinding process exposes starch, which represents 90% of the corn seed. The other 10% is allowed to flow through the ethanol process, but is dried, stored, and later sold as livestock feed. Once the corn is milled, it is mixed with water to create a slurry. This slurry looks very similar to oatmeal or pancake batter. Enzymes and yeast are added to turn the complex starch molecules into simple sugars. This process is known as fermentation and takes approximately 50 to 60 hours. The yeast consume the sugar during fermentation. Yeast produce carbon dioxide and alcohol. As a result, we now have corn solids, water, and alcohol. This mixture is also known as beer mash. The carbon dioxide is allowed to evaporate and later is captured and used in CO2 processing for bottle beveraging, dry ice manufacturing, and underground sequestration. The ethanol and water mixture is refined in a distillation process. Ethanol and water evaporates at different temperatures. The process separates ethanol from water. The ethanol is transferred to a storage tank to be shipped out as fuel to fuel blenders. Ethanol is transported by truck and rail. The remaining solids and water are sent to a drying process where livestock feed is produced. The livestock feed is known as DDGS, or dry distiller grains with solubles. These grains are stored and shipped to livestock facilities across the country. Much of today's fuel ethanol is made from the process I just described. Corn is simply ground into a flour, water, enzymes, and yeast are added, and the mixture is allowed to ferment. The distillation process separates the solids and the liquids. Ethanol is stored and transported to fuel blenders. And finally, the remaining solids are dried and shipped to feed livestock. In 1925, Henry Ford tells the New York Times, "The fuel of the future is going to come from the fruit like the sumac out by the road, or the apples and weeds or sawdust. Almost anything, there is fuel in every bit of vegetable matter that can be fermented." Today we use ethanol to substitute our dependence on foreign oil. Ethanol also burns cleaner and is good for the environment. In the same 1917 National Geographic article, Alexander Graham Bell concluded his remarks by saying, "We need never fear the exhaustion of our present fuel supplies so long as we can produce an annual crop of alcohol to any extent desired." So, the next time you fill up on gas, remember how ethanol is made. Feel good that it is made of renewable fuels, cleaner and cheaper than other man-made fuels. Thank you for your time.